So what should we expect from Trump-Kim Part 2? Joining me now is Hal Kempfer. Hal is a retired U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and currently the president of KIP, a strategic risk management firm. Hal, what does the president need to get out of this meeting to show that North Korea is sincere about its pledges to denuclearize?
Michelle, I think what he needs to do is he needs to get an agreement that they will agree to inspections, to have sanctioned, recognized international inspectors come in, look at the facilities, look at particularly the Yongbyon facility, which may still be in operation. Some recent imagery from Planet satellite photos show that it looks like steam is still coming up. People are still going to work. So they definitely have not stopped nuclear production, and that facility produces high-grade uranium, but it also produces plutonium. So they're still producing the components, if you will, of the nuclear weapons program, and that's probably the biggest hurdle, is to get that settled as far as the nuclear inspections and the true denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
All right. Well, the president likes to point that progress has been made because Kim hasn't test-fired any missiles since the president started tweeting at him. What do you think Kim wants to get out of this meeting?
Well, what Kim would want to get out of the meeting ultimately is to have the U.S. withdraw all of its military forces from the Korean Peninsula, and basically there would be nothing but North Korea and South Korea. That's his ultimate goal. Of course, with that said, there are signs that they realize they're going to have to fundamentally change the Korean economy, if you will. They don't want to change the politics, which is going to be very difficult for them, but they want to change the economy. That's why holding this in Vietnam is such a momentous thing, because Vietnam went from basically a regime not that dissimilar to what North Korea represents into opening up, bringing in foreign investment, and of course today has a very robust economy, strong in international trade, in many ways a real success story. On the other hand, looking at the Hermit Kingdom, there's a lot of questions whether they can change that much, and a lot of questions whether investors want to put money into North Korea, because that has never proven to be a good investment in the past.
And Hal, the president has touted the economic potential of North Korea and how he could help with that. But on the other end, we have the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, recently saying that no matter what, North Korea is unlikely to give up nuclear weapons and production capabilities, and that the leaders view nuclear weapons as critical to regime survival. So what does this mean? If intelligence is determining that diplomacy is not going to get North Korea to denuclearize, what is the approach?
Well, there's a possibility of trying to thread the needle where North Korea will say, we're going to denuclearize, but then it's going to be a real kind of cat and mouse game where they try to evade actually denuclearizing. I lean towards agreeing with Dan Coats and the intelligence community. They look at nuclear weapons as the success or the survival of the regime. They don't. The thing is, over the past 20 years, 25 years, their conventional forces have been severely degraded, not just because not because they've been taken out in any type of combat operations or something, but just simply because they haven't been upgraded over the years. Since the early 90s, they've been slipping further and further behind. So now they have to rely on nuclear weapons as this strategic counterweight to remain viable as a military power on the Korean Peninsula. So there may be some agreement in principle. I think putting it into practice is going to be tough, and I think that's why the U.S. has to stand really hard and fast on making sure that nuclear inspectors have full access to go in there and look around. Otherwise, we're going to have a situation that we've seen in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq, where we're looking for weapons of mass destruction, regardless of all politics there, but they were trying to deliberately deceive our inspectors as to what they actually had.
Yeah, and the verification process, as you say, if that does happen, will be a big challenge. What we're looking at right now, Hal, is live pictures of Hanoi, Vietnam, where Kim Jong-Un is about to disembark from the train that took him there for this historic second summit. Taking that famous green train, the president, of course, is on his way via Air Force One. Hal, whilst we're waiting for Kim Jong-un to step out of the train, there are sources close to Pyongyang that say that perhaps something that he does want to achieve is a goal that his father and grandfather weren't able to attain, and that is a peace treaty. That achievement is appealing to him and perhaps to his ego, along with being able to get credit for economic success for the country. Do you think that that could be enough of a motivator for him personally?
Michelle, if he could get a peace treaty, that would be a huge success story. Of course, we've had an armistice in place, well, literally since the 50s, since we ceased active combat operations in the Korean Peninsula. But an armistice is very different from a peace treaty. Now, a peace treaty is a little bit of a stretch in terms of what they can functionally probably achieve. I could see the coming out of this, though, an agreement to form a permanent peace treaty of sorts. Of course, we'd have to work that out with South Korea. China would probably have to be a player in that as well. But that has been talked about a lot. And it's possible. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. But certainly a cessation of the war, not just an armistice, but to say formally the war is over, that could come out of this summit.
And just a correction there, what we are looking at is in fact Dongdang. That is a city right on the Chinese border with Vietnam. The train is going to need to switch tracks and make its way to Hanoi, Vietnam for that summit. Hal, the president likes to boast about his good rapport with Kim Jong-un. Much has been made of their relationship. How vital is personal chemistry in a negotiation like this? Do you think that that could be a significant factor?
Well, Michelle, I think it is a significant factor. I think it kind of actually irritates some of the intelligence community. They seem to have a very good rapport. They seem to get along very well. In something like this, where you're trying to make a huge monumental change, having that personal trust. I mean, this is something we saw with Reagan and Gorbachev going back to the 1980s. Despite everything else that was out there, despite everything saying that, we can't trust the Soviets, we can't really deal with the Soviets, they actually came together and started working together really on a personal basis, and they moved things in dramatic ways. And there is thought that this is sort of the same thing. Of course, the fear is, does rapport start to overshadow some very fundamental differences that we have? And might we agree to something now at the summit, which would be very difficult to implement later on?
And Hal, there we see him, Kim Jong-un, walking out of that train in Dongdang that is on the border between China and Vietnam. And he is going to re-embark on another train, I believe, that will take him to the exact location of the summit, which we will all be watching very closely. And of course, we'll be covering here on I-24 News throughout the day and throughout the evening. Hal, always great to have you. Thank you so much for your analysis. Hal Kempfer.